Let's now turn the focus on Taiwan, which is going to elections this weekend. The polls to elect a new president and a new parliament comes amid Taiwan's strained ties with China. China considers the self-governed island as a part of its territory and have ramped up its military presence in the Taiwan Strait over the last few years. The Democratic Progressive Party, known for its pro-independence stance, is the frontrunner. It is eyeing an unprecedented third consecutive presidential term. China has already raised the red flag over the party's presidential candidate, saying that his win could pose a problem to their ties with Taiwan. Also in the fray is the KMT, the party which at the helm of the authoritarian one-party rule in the island for almost 40 years, from 1949 to 1987. The party claims that it is not pro-China, but favors closer ties with the mainland. The Taiwan People's Party is challenging the traditional duopoly of the DPP and the KMT, pitching themselves as an alternative. Yes, what's happening politically in Taiwan? A boundary dispute with China, and also the politics watched by the United States, because no one wants it to become the front like Ukraine. Moving on, United States Trade Representative Catherine Tai is in India to hold talks with her counterpart Piyush Goyal. US has recently emerged as India's largest trading partner. In 2022, bilateral trade in goods and services stood at $192 billion. On top of Catherine Tai's agenda is to reduce the trade deficit with India, seek more market access for US agricultural goods. India is also seeking faster processing of visas for Indian professionals and businessmen, and restoration of generalized system of benefits. In the context of this visit, I caught up with USISPF President Mukesh Aghi in New Delhi. Let's listen in.
Well, I think obviously from the US perspective, the trade surplus India has, even though it's around $23 billion, they would like to make sure that it becomes even, because politically it gets sensitive, the way it's with China, which is a much larger number. And from India perspective, I think it's important that you're able to get mobility going more and more, because our trade is more on services than goods itself. And I think we want to be able to move more and more talent into the US market, which needs it in a much more efficient and effective manner. So I think that's where the concern would be.
Right. What essentially is the ask on having faster processing for business visas, also the totalization agreement, which has been talked about for many years now? Do you see any closure on these two fronts?
So I think when you look on the faster processing, we have seen a lot of progress there. It can be done more, absolutely, because our objective is to get 500,000 students into the US to get higher education. Objective is to take the trade up to $500 billion. That's required talent moving across the country itself. So I think that visa processing is moving. It is more of an issue with the Congress, which has not done anything so far. We will put a concentrated effort on the House side to move forward, but that's a mid to long-term objective.
Okay. Now, when it comes to restoration of GSP benefits, this has been an ask ever since the Trump administration had revoked these benefits for India. Could there be any concession made for India by the US administration currently?
So I think the impact of GSP is insignificant. When you look at all the category of goods under GSP, they are the fastest export growing goods into the US. Yes, I think politically it'd be good for US to grant that, but I don't think Biden administration, they're not as much focused on trade deals. They will restore GSP also in the near future.
Right. Now, speaking about some of the issues in the trade partnership, there are, of course, products, especially in the agricultural segment, where the US would want greater market access in India. If there were 4 or 5 product lines which are a priority for the US administration right now, for the USTR, which would those be according to you?
Well, I think obviously agriculture is critical for US to export into India, be it apple to almond to others, strawberries or raspberries. And so we're seeing quite a bit of that moving forward. I think India has been quite flexible dealing with that. So I think that process continues. It's a sensitive issue for India also because you have a farmer community, which is a large vote bank. You don't want to upset them. So I think India will be very cautious and careful to having these come in and basically inundate the market.
In terms of regulatory issues or market access issues, non-tariff barriers in India, would you like to flag some out for our viewers, things which are a priority for U.S. businesses and the American government?
I think from a U.S. business perspective, always ease of doing business is a concern. We have seen a lot of progress last 10 years. A lot of redundant laws have been taken away. A lot of regulatory things has been automated. A lot of sectors have been open for. So I think I have to compliment the government from that perspective. But there's always room to improve. And I think when you go down more to the state level, some states are very well moving forward. Some states are dragging it. So what we're seeing is the U.S. investors are going to states which are making changes faster, setting up their operations in those states from manufacturing down to services itself. So I think there is a scope for improvement, and hopefully as we work with the state level government and central government, that process will continue.
Any reasons that you track for the dip in imports and exports between India and U.S. for the last few months?
I think, basically the consumer sentiment defines consumption. And that has an impact on exports and imports also. In the U.S., I think what we saw is a population which had almost $2 trillion in the savings account has completely dissipated. And now it is carrying almost $1.5 trillion credit card debt. So the issue is the savings have gone, debt has gone up, so they have become much more prudent on consumption side, and that is having an impact on the import and export from India itself. So I think hopefully with time that will also switch also.
Right. Now, speaking to you about the recent issues in the India-U.S. partnership, and this is with regard to Khalistani terrorism with the plot against Gurpatwant Singh Pannun, and this is a major diplomatic issue between the two countries. Does it affect business and predictions of the U.S. companies on India, whether they want to invest more? Are they looking at some sort of clarity, some sort of messaging from both governments on this, on how they're resolving it?
Well, I think you have to understand, number one, the Justice Department in the U.S. is a very independent institution. And especially the Southern District in New York is fiercely independent. In fact, if you look at, they have indicted President's son also. So I think that shows their independence itself. But more important is the maturity on part of the U.S. administration and maturity on part of Indian government leadership. They're able to deal with the issue, basically isolate and let the other process continue. If you look at the talks on ISET, the talk on transfer of technology, talks on investment continues. That momentum has not stopped. In fact, when you see what's happening with U.S. companies in China, we are seeing a transition, an acceleration of China Plus One strategy, and India is benefiting from that. So I think while that issue of Pannun is a cause of concern, but I think that will take through its legal process, and there is enough maturity on both sides to handle that very cautiously, carefully, so the overall relationship does not get impacted.
So you don't feel there is any immediate impact on business and investment plans?
I don't think so.
Right. And finally, any key sectors where you expect more interest from U.S. companies and possibly investments in 2024?
So I think what we are seeing is a trend where U.S. companies are moving beyond just back office into R&D centers and now moving to the innovation centers. They would like to manufacture in India products for the Indian market. They like to manufacture products in India for the rest of the emerging market also. So that trend continues from, you can see, from medical devices to auto components to pharma side, from consumer electronics. So I think that trend you will see continue quite aggressively from the U.S. companies.
All right. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Global Eye. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to CNBC TV 18. The news continues on the other side.